went
Yes.
from 29 to 30. So I think we can start then. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining, and welcome to this webinar organized in the framework of the WinterMed project, which you might know or you probably know. So WinterMed, just for those who may don't know, stands for Winter Islands Network all year round tourism experience in the Mediterranean. And it's a more or less 3-year project co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund, and more specifically under the Interreg Mediterranean program. So today with us, we will have, you probably know them, Jasmine Andraus. I'm not sure whether I pronounced it correctly. Sorry, Jasmine, if not. And Massimiliano Gini, who will be there to help with technical issues and to assist us through this webinar. But I will introduce her a bit later on. We have also Tonia Koutsopoulou from the University of Thessaly. I will explain who she is and what she will do. She will be our speaker today. So before we start with the presentation of the good practice itself, I would just like to perhaps to give you a bit of introduction first of the CoEvolve project, which is actually the project under which the tool that will be presented today was developed. CoEvolve was another InterregMed project, 3-year InterregMed project, which closed in October last year, and which was also focusing on sustainable tourism. And CoEvolve was more specifically aiming at analyzing and promoting the coevolution of human activities and natural systems in touristic coastal areas based on the principles of the integrated coastal zone management and maritime spatial planning. And the idea was to demonstrate the feasibility of planning processes based on ICZM and MSP. Actually, this was the scope of and the purpose of the project, but I guess Tonia will explain a bit more about this. And among the tools that CoEvolve developed, there was the Tourism Sustainability Toolkit, which is the tool that will be presented today. And this tool actually is aimed at establishing a common method of defining and evaluating tourism sustainability through the use of a conceptual model of indicators addressing key threats and enabling factors in the Mediterranean. But as I said, Tonia will speak about this much better than I could ever do. This sustainability toolkit was designed by one of the partners of CoEvolve, which is the University of Thessaly, which is represented today by Tonia Koutsopoulou. And it was developed by Tonia herself, together with Professor Harry Kokorsis from both from the University of Thessaly. But before giving the floor to our speaker, whom I'd like to thank very much for her availability and from the kindness of accepting the invitation, I'm just going to give you some instructions about the way we will proceed and some, let's say, technicalities about the webinar itself. So when accessing the platform Zoom, we kindly ask you to write down your name so that we can easily identify yourselves and know who's speaking, for instance, or who wants to speak. That's very important. And during the webinar, please note that you can start writing down comments and questions in the question and answer box or in the chat, I guess. Jasmine and Massimiliano, as I said at the beginning, are here to help in any case. And at the end of the presentation, during the question and answer session, you can either raise your hand. I think, that there is a button for this. You can raise your hand and ask to speak, or write in the chat if it's easier for you that you want to speak. You can just write down, I want to intervene or I want to speak, and then we'll give you the floor. as I said, you're able to start asking questions during the presentation when they come to your mind, for instance, and we will keep them for the end, and I will remember to ask it to our speaker. So I think that's it for now for the general and a bit lengthy introduction. Now I will give the floor to Tonia, who will present the Tourism Sustainability Toolkit. Tonia, floor is yours.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for this very nice presentation. I think you have heard the toolkit so many times, you could actually present it very well yourself. Good morning to everybody. As Emmanuel said, I'm Tonia Koutsopoulou. I work for the University of Thessaly. And today I will show you a presentation regarding the Sustainability Toolkit we developed in the context of the COBOL project. I will try to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see it. Okay. Now, the toolkit is more or less a methodology, a common framework for selecting sustainability indicators if we want to start measuring our sustainability as a destination. The reason we need this kind of framework is because it can help us correlate and co-evaluate the economic and social performance of tourism activities with the environmental performance and impacts on tourist destinations in the long term, in order to ensure the conditions for sustainable development in the future. Now, the purpose of the toolkit, as we said earlier, is that it provides us with a common methodology and a list of sustainability indicators that allows comparisons between coastal destinations, but it is flexible enough to highlight the different needs and priorities of its coastal area. It can work as a basic guide for data collection and evaluation on key issues of tourism development, and also help us assess sustainability at the destination level in the long term. As to how and where we can implement the toolkit, we can basically transfer it to all types of Mediterranean coastal tourism destinations by selecting the most suitable indicators that best address the needs and particularities of its destination. Finally, the toolkit is addressed to all local and regional authorities who want to initiate the process for gathering data and set up measuring and monitoring procedures, or in other words, all destinations that want to be sustainable and therefore need to start measuring indicators by engaging all tourism-related stakeholders in this process. So our concept is that we need to consider the diversity of destinations in measuring sustainability, since it is directly linked to the different types of tourism activities that take place in each type of destination. These types in Mediterranean coast are mainly beach and maritime destinations, ecotourism destinations, urban and cultural destinations, and also cruising and recreational boating destinations. As you can see in the figure, we have developed a three-tier system of indicators that takes into account all four dimensions of sustainability, meaning economy, society, economy, and governance factors. The first set of indicators is called core indicators, and mainly comprises of 40 indicators from the ETIS system. This set is meant to serve as the basis for comparison of the sustainable development among all types of coastal destinations. So it is actually our common basis where we start. The second set is what we call destination indicators. With it, we want to address the specific issues of coastal areas that are directly related to the predominant type of tourism activity in each type of destination. For example, as we said, cruising or ecotourism. And the third and the final set of indicators is linked to area-specific critical issues and is meant to address the key threats, enabling factors, and governance issues that are identified at the destination level. Now, these issues are not common for all destinations, but they are very important in terms of their sustainability. They could be limiting factors for their development or governance aspects that we need to be aware of. For example, these factors could be the limited water resources or flooding events, or in terms of governance, the level of the tourism sector involvement in the public policy. Now, moving forward, here you can see the list of COBOL pilot areas. We had 7 pilot areas, 1 in Greece, 2 in Italy, 1 in Spain and France, and 2 in Croatia. These are highly diversified destinations in terms of the types of tourism activities they develop, and also in terms of their tourism dynamics. Now, methodologically, we have taken into consideration the different sets of indicators that are available from different organizations, like the World Tourism Organization, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and of course the European Tourism Indicator System. And we created from there a priority list of indicators that follows the 3-tier system we described earlier. You can see here the core indicators. The next slide, okay. The destination indicators, which are actually 5 subsets of indicators, each one related to one type of tourism activity: beach maritime, urban cultural, cruising, recreational boating, and nature ecotourism. And here you can see the pilot area specific indicators we described earlier. Now, operationally, if someone would like to implement this toolkit, there are some key steps for this process. The first one would have to be to engage the local stakeholders, from public authorities and technical agencies to economic chambers or scientific and research institutions. All the tourism-related stakeholders at the local level, in order to identify the key issues, the current and future development patterns for tourism development, and also the area-specific challenges and particularities. Then you can proceed to the actual selection of sustainability indicators through the consultation process. And finally, you will have to set up measuring mechanisms and start reviewing your data availability. Here are some examples from COBOL. Here, you can see here the interface, its pilot area used in order to select the indicators through consultation with their stakeholders. We asked them to give us the relevant, to prioritize the indicators, which of them are relevant for their pilot area, for their destination. And then we asked them to give us the availability of data. Do we have quantitative data for this? Do we have qualitative assessments or proxy data? That's why we did that in order to identify the data gaps. Then we asked them to select the destination indicator sets that correspond to the type of tourism activities they develop at each destination. And finally, the pilot area specific issues they have to address so that they can customize their final toolkit. This is an example of a common interface you could use. It's very simple. It could be through an Excel document, and you can go through it in workshops and public consultation processes. Another example is from COBOL, is the data availability analysis. You can see here the analysis we did for all our pilot areas. you can see that there are many data gaps, and that is why we need the toolkit in order to help us target what we need to start measuring and gathering. Now, the last example is about the sustainability analysis of the pilot area of Alexandroupoli Makri area in Greece. You can see here the indicators they chose to measure. Let's say their final toolkit. This is the availability of data at the destination level. You can see they have many data gaps. They had too many proxy data which were not very useful for the actual measurement of the indicators. And some key suggestions and key messages we were able to extract from this process. Finally, I would like to close this presentation with some general remarks on the use of indicators in planning, why we need these indicators, why bother and go through all this process. They can help us by providing hints in order to improve our existing tourism models or shift towards alternative models of tourism development. They can highlight the existing data gaps. They can provide guidelines for future measurements. They can help us measure and actually quantify our stakeholders' perceptions. They can help us define the thresholds, and by the thresholds I mean the reference values we need to compare our measurements in order to see whether we are sustainable or not. They can help us produce probability scenarios in order to adjust our future planning actions and policies. And of course, they can help us monitor any changes in sustainability in the future. Here is a link you will find on COBOL website. There is a ready-to-use Excel add-in. You can actually download it and start working on it if you want, of course. I am going to show you just the, okay, how do I close this one? Okay, I will show you just the guidelines. You can see that the guidelines for the Excel are very analytical. They can help you go through all these steps. Here is the interface for the Excel form. You actually, here you can select the indicators you are interested in. You can see the type of measurement you would need to do. Then very briefly, you can choose the type of measurement, whether you want to use quantitative or qualitative data, or it is a yes or no answer, perhaps. Then you insert your values and your thresholds. You define the type of the threshold, whether this value you enter is a minimum or a maximum value. And here is where what I wanted to show you. You can see here that the values are highlighted. It actually calculates on its own whether you are sustainable or not based on its indicator value you enter. So it can be a starting point for you to start inserting the data you already have available and see where you lack in terms of sustainability. There are also some graphic operations which are available on the Excel. As COBOL, I think we would be more than happy to help you go through with it if you have any questions or if you need any assistance. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. It's better to have more time for questions. So I won't stop sharing my screen in case you want to go back to any slide, okay? Emmanuel, can you hear me? Okay. I can't hear any of you in case somebody speaks.
Okay, then can you hear me now? Okay, brilliant. And now, Tonia, you're muted, right? So thank you so much, Tonia, for the very nice and concise presentation. I think that, well, as you said, you prefer to keep time for questions, but it was a very good presentation, which gave a good idea of how the tool is structured, how it can be used. So I think that now it's time for questions. So I can see, if I'm not mistaken, that we have no questions. Well, Stella said, great presentation, Tonia. Thank you. Thank you, Stella. Apparently we have no questions so far, at least no written questions. So, well, I guess that as we said at the beginning, you are able to raise your hand and we can give you the floor. So if you have any question related to how to use the model, or if you need any clarification, any precision about the model itself, or how we could support you in applying this model, please feel free to ask. Apparently there is a question now. Okay, yeah, right. Okay, so we have one question from Giuseppe Rodriguez from the Sustainable Tourism Community. That Tonia, you probably know Giuseppe, I guess. So Giuseppe is asking, thank you, Giuseppe. Well, hello, Giuseppe, and thank you for the question. So hello, I'm reading the question. Hello, Tonia, very interesting. In your pilot areas, could you apply the indicators more than once to see what were the evolution of some of them? Tonia, I don't know if you're able to, well, we can't hear you because apparently you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, that's exactly the idea of the toolkit. It's not just you know, once in a lifetime measurement. You would have to set up period for measuring these indicators again and again, for example, every 2 years, in order to have a sustainability overview, you know, in the future. So the answer is definitely yes. You would have to set up monitoring mechanisms in order to do that through observatories or anything else.
Okay. So Giuseppe, if you need any more clarification, please let us know. Then we have another question from Jasmine. So I guess that these are general questions about the use of the model. So I'm going to read the first one. What were the criteria that allowed to identify the pilot area destination indicators and specific indicators? And with regards to these two levels of indicators, what are the challenges that are and interested that sorry, well, let's begin with the first part of the question and then we'll see to clarify the second part. So what were the criteria that allowed to identify the pilot area destination indicators and specific indicators?
So the identification of both sets of indicators was through the consultation process with the stakeholders. They identified their, at least let's start with the destination indicators. They identified both the current development patterns. Let's say that they are developing beach and maritime tourism, which was most likely the most common case. But they also identified indicators for development for alternative tourism models, let's say ecotourism, that they would like to develop in the future. So they consulted with their stakeholders and selected the indicators both for the current development patterns and the future ones. Also for the area-specific indicators, this came through the analysis of the COBOL staging phase, which helped us identify the key threats at the Mediterranean coastal destinations, and then through the consultation processes with stakeholders at the local level, we were able to select more specifically the indicators that, that addressed these issues at the local level. Like we said on the presentation, if pilot area experiences flooding events, then they should they chose accordingly this indicator to put in this set to have it in their toolkit, because it's something they need to monitor every now and then. I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly.
Well, I guess yes. Otherwise, Jasmine can tell us or write another question if there is need for. Yeah, Jasmine said that yes. And the other one, sorry, I had some difficulties in reading the whole question, but now it's very clear. So the second question is, with regards to the two levels of indicators, destination indicators and pilot area specific indicators, what are the challenges that an interested territory would face, and what, in your experience, are the stakeholders to be consulted?
Okay, the challenges are two actually, and they are major challenges. The first one is that we don't have the data destination level. So at least for now, it would be very difficult for an interested territory to start measuring right now. It would take some time in order to set up the processes and the mechanisms in order to start gathering this kind of data. And the other major difficulty would be to set the reference values. By reference values, tried also to explain it earlier, is that, okay, if we have measured, let's say, the flooding events or the erosion of the shoreline, and we have come up with the value, how do we know if this value is sustainable or not? Is it small? Is it big? Where should it be? Where should we place it? We don't have these kinds of thresholds. They're very difficult to identify. They can also be somehow identified through the consultation processes with your stakeholders, especially technical agencies and scientific institutions. That's why I think that's also the second part of the question. Yes, the stakeholders. That's why we insist so much to engage all these types of stakeholders. It is very important to have both the administrative part, which is actually going to implement it and put it into policy, And of course, we need the scientific part and the technical part, because the opinion can be very helpful to actually measure the indicators. So in my opinion, you should consider all stakeholders that are related to tourism activities in one way or another at the destination, at the local level. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, I guess so, yeah. All right, then. Do we have any other question, or someone would like perhaps to take the floor? You have this possibility as well. Well, Massimiliano made a comment. I found the way you built your indicators divided into 3 sets very smart.
Thank you.
Okay, then. Yeah, there's another question from Giuseppe. Have you developed any indicator related to the perception of visitors about the sustainability of the destination? That's a very interesting one.
I suppose you mean how the visitor sees the sustainability of the destination, right? Yes, there are actually many indicators that try to measure the perception of visitors. They are included both in the ETIS system, if I'm not mistaken, but also in the other sets of indicators we took under consideration. I want to say here that, okay, we have developed this priority list of indicators, but the actual pool of indicators for COBOL was a very, very massive one, comprised over 200 indicators. So we have this priority list, but it is not something that you can't amend, something that you can change. You can add indicators. You can find many indicators that measure both the perception of the visitor, but also the perception of the people living in this destination, which is also very important to us. And it definitely can help us measure and perhaps quantify how sustainable is our destination.
Okay, thank you for the answer. And then we have another question from Jasmine. What are the benefits that the pilot areas have found through the use of the toolkit? Can you do some practical example?
I think that the benefits are more or less in the long term. Okay, there is the project and the 4 years of the project, but you all know that projects have very specific actions and timetables. So we developed these toolkits and we encourage them to start using them at their destinations. Some of them they had already foreseen actions towards measuring. I think that in Italy they set up an observatory for measuring such indicators. Emmanuel, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was in Italy.
Yes.
In Po Delta.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
But like we said earlier, it's difficult to say about the practical use of the toolkit right now, because we don't have the data in order to start measuring. It's something that will help us in the long term. We need to set up the procedures and the mechanisms now in order to have results in the years to come. Hopefully, of course, that's not something you can do within the 4 years of a project. You can do some of it. you can develop the methodology, you can set up an observatory, but whether or not you're going to implement it, it's not actually something, it's also a political decision, and it's not something you can answer easily right now.
I can imagine. Okay, then, do we have any other question? We still have plenty of time. Well, I mean, if we're done, we can also, of course, close the meeting a bit earlier. But you can, take benefit of the remaining time to ask any question you may have. Okay, thank you for your answers. Jasmine says. Do you have anyone else who'd like? Thank you so much, Massimiliano. Yep. And thank you, well, of course, so much for setting up this very nice webinar and for the perfect organization. Do we have any other question, any comments? Or just giving a few more seconds. If you want to raise your hand, you can do it and take the floor and make any comment related to the topic, or nope. Okay, then Tonia, is there anything else you'd like to say before closing, perhaps, or take the opportunity to, I don't know.
I would like to thank you all for inviting me here today. I want to say that both as a former COBOL partner and also as a partner of the sustainable tourism community, we are very interested in these types of webinars. These are exactly the things we need in order to transfer the results of the project. So keep in touch, let us know. Thank you all very, very much for today. Perhaps Joseph would like to add something. I don't know.
Like to take the floor, Joseph? Well, just in the meantime, I don't know if Joseph wants to speak, or if it's technically possible. I guess yes, but I'm not, to be honest, I'm not the one managing these issues. Okay. So just a few final comments, and just to follow up on what you said, Tonia, yeah, for transferring purposes, I think it's very important, of course, to set up this kind of webinars. They're very useful. Apparently, they work quite well, and it's a very nice experience. I know that there are plenty of other webinars coming in the next days and weeks, but yeah, indeed, it's a very good way of keeping these results of former projects that worked and that were well thought alive, and taking them beyond the area of the projects that were initially designed in, actually. Okay. Fine. So Giuseppe said no. I support Tonia's words. So I think we can close the webinar now. So thank you very much, Tonia. Again, thank you so much for everything. It was very nice, and we'll be in touch in any case, since you're, as you said, now part of the sustainable tourism community of the InteragMed. And I guess that if some partners or stakeholders of WinterMed projects want to ask you specific questions about the model, you'll be able to help them. And just before closing, last information is about the upcoming webinars that we'll have in the coming days. So on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, Friday the 19th, that's correct, we'll have a presentation of CoEvolve's transferability plan. So another presentation about one of the tools developed by CoEvolve. This will be this Friday, same time, if I'm not mistaken. Then next week on Monday, we'll have a presentation on the presentation itself is closed, implementing the sustainable destination management model in pilot areas, which was developed by MitoMed Plus project, which is another former project of InteragMed about sustainable tourism. So this will be on Monday the 22nd, next week. And then we'll have another one about Eurovelo 8, which is called a Med long distance cycle route. And this, I'm so sorry, I forgot the date. I will find it for you. The last one, yeah, here it is, will be on the 24th of June. 24th of June, about Euro Velo 8, a Mediterranean long distance cycle route. So this was just to inform you about the upcoming webinars. So thank you very much again, everyone. So Tonia, Jasmine and Massimiliano for technical issues, and participants, of course, thank you very much for being here today, and have a very nice day, and see you all very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Goodbye.